Once upon a time. So just watch me as I make my hair and tell you this story. Once upon a time, there lived a man named Paul. Paul had a friend named Stephen. Now, Stephen and Paul are best friends. Stephen got married and had his own children, and Paul got married and also had his own children. These people were friends together, they grew up together, did everything almost together. Now, at their old age, not that old, but their children are now up to age. They now go to the city to stay, while Paul and Stephen still remained in the village and still were friends. Now, all along, Stephen didn't know that Paul were practicing or was practicing witchcraft. Paul was doing bad things that Stephen didn't know about. They still attended church together. They were both elders in the church, but Stephen didn't know that his friend Paul was doing something else behind him. So Stephen's son, was living in Port Harcourt and working in an oil company. So in this oil company, somebody now give him connection that he applied for a visa to go outside the country, which the visa was given to him. Now, out of happiness, Stephen's son came home, informed his father that he has gotten visa to travel out of the country. The father was very happy. The father didn't have anything in mind. He went to go and tell Paul, his friend, that's Stephen, went to go and tell Paul, his friend, that, oh, my son has gotten visa. They give my son visa to travel outside the country. And Paul pretended to be happy. They both got drink and drank together, and then Stephen went home. In the night of that same day, meanwhile, Stephen's son has gone back to the city to stay. In the night of that same day, Paul went to Port Harcourt. Mind you, this man named Paul has never been to the city before. All his life, he has spent in the village. He married in the village, raised his children in the village. His children grew up in the village before they now went to the city. Now, how was Paul able to locate Stephen's son in Port Harcourt, since he has never been in Port Harcourt before? Stephen's son didn't send him address. How was he able to locate Stephen's son? Guess what? This man used witchcraft. We used his spiritual powers to disappear to where Stephen's son was living. And then Stephen's son saw him. He was not wearing any slippers. Somebody that came from the village came barefooted. Stephen's son was surprised. Stephen's son was like, what? Who does that? Now, Stephen's son welcomed him as someone he has known to be his father's best friend right from childhood. Now, Stephen's son welcomed him, gave him food, he ate, and then he spent a night in Stephen's son's house. That's Mr. Paul. Now, all these things was happening. Stephen didn't know that his son has harbored a stranger, which is his friend, Mr. Paul. Then, in the morning, Stephen's son gave him transport, got him a new slippers, and then asked him to go home. Stephen's son wanted to give him a lift to a park where he will enter transport to go home. But he said, no, my son, stay. I know how I came and I will go back the same way I came. The boy didn't have anything in mind. And then the Stephen's son now went back and went to work. Mr. Paul now disappeared back home that same morning. That's to show you that he did not travel. Now, this Mr. Stephen's son went to work. Immediately, Mr. Paul came back. He went to Mr. Stephen. They stayed together. Mr. Stephen still didn't know that he paid his son a strange visit in the city. Now, Mr. Stephen's son started feeling sick. As a man, he didn't want to bother his father so quick because of his illness. He started feeling sick. He was going to the hospital. He went to the hospital that day, the second day, the third day. They now ran tests and saw that, okay, this sickness, we don't know what to call this sickness. And that was how he came home. They took him to a herbalist. His sickness was now getting worse. As I took him to a herbalist, the herbalist now said that something strange happened, that he need to speak. That was when he told his father, Mr. Stephen, that Mr. Paul, his friend, paid him a strange visit and told his father how everything happened. And the father was mad at him. The father was mad at Mr. Paul. Mr. Stephen now told the herbalist what would they do. The herbalist now said that nothing will be done, that in 24 hours time that his son is going to die. Mr. Stephen started praying. Mr. Stephen went to Mr. Paul and told him to come and see what is happening, that his son is dying slowly. What did he do to his son? Mr. Paul now said, Mr. Stephen, I don't want to ever see you in my house again. Our friendship is over. These are people that were friends right from childhood. That was how their friendship ended. And in the next 24 hours, Mr. Stephen's son died. This Mr. Paul, out of wickedness, did this thing so that Mr. Stephen's son will not travel out of the country, because none of his own child is outside the country, forgetting that if Mr. Stephen's son travels there, he will also connect his own children to come over, because he has been his father's best friend right from childhood. Now, tell me, is that not wickedness? If you are watching this video, try to be a nice person. Don't be a jealous person. Like and subscribe.